As the medical systems finished treating his damaged arms, General Kickstar found himself in a position he had never experienced before in his long military career. He was sitting peacefully on the bridge of an enemy vessel receiving medical care from the very people he had come to kill. The irony was not lost on him. Captain Lee Dong-hyun stood nearby monitoring the treatment process and occasionally checking on the status of the other alien soldiers throughout the ship. The humans showed genuine concern for their welfare, despite the fact that they had boarded his vessel with violent intentions. "Your bones will heal properly with the right medical attention," the captain said as he reviewed the scanner results. "We can provide basic stabilization here, but you will need surgery on your ship to repair the fractures completely. The damage looks worse than it actually is." Park Ji-hoon appeared with a report on the status of the boarding party. All 20 alien soldiers were accounted for and receiving appropriate medical treatment for their various injuries. Most had suffered only minor bruises and sprains from their encounters with the ship's defensive systems. "None of the injuries are life-threatening," he reported to his captain. "The restraint systems performed exactly as designed, providing maximum educational impact while minimizing permanent harm to the subjects. All aliens will be able to return to their vessel under their own power." Kim Hae-jin was monitoring communications between the alien soldiers and their mothership. The conversations revealed confusion and disbelief as the troops tried to explain what had happened to them. Many were having difficulty describing the human technology in terms their commanders would understand. General Kickstar listened to these reports and felt a strange mixture of emotions that he had never experienced before. There was shame at having been defeated so completely by creatures he had underestimated. There was anger at his own arrogance in thinking this would be an easy victory, but there was also something else, a feeling he had not experienced since he was very young and still learning the warrior traditions of his people. It was curiosity mixed with respect for opponents who had proven themselves superior through intelligence rather than brute force. The humans had not just defeated his boarding party, they had taught them something valuable about the nature of warfare itself. They had shown that strength and aggression were not the only paths to victory, and that sometimes the greatest victories came from changing the rules of engagement entirely. Captain Lee Dong-hyun seemed to sense his internal struggle and sat down beside him on the modified bridge that continued to shift and change around them. The human spoke quietly, so that the conversation would remain private between them. "I know this has been a difficult experience for you, General," he said with genuine sympathy. "Your entire military training has been based on concepts that we have just demonstrated to be incomplete. This kind of paradigm shift is never easy to accept." The captain gestured toward the complex systems that surrounded them on all sides. "Everything you see here represents thousands of years of human development and innovation. We did not become dangerous because we are stronger or faster than other species. We became dangerous because we think differently." Park Ji-hoon joined the conversation as he finished helping the last of the alien soldiers. "Many civilizations throughout the galaxy have made the same assumptions your empire made about human capabilities," he said. "They see our small ships and limited numbers and assume we must be weak. What they fail to understand is that humans learned long ago that the greatest victories come from avoiding fights entirely." Kim Hae-jin added from her position at the communications station, "We prefer to demonstrate our capabilities in educational contexts rather than lethal ones." The general found his voice for the first time since the restraint system had captured him. Why, he asked simply, "Why show me this instead of just destroying my ship and ending the threat we represent to your people?" Captain Lee Dong-hyun smiled at the question. "Because we believe that understanding is more powerful than destruction," he replied. "When you return to your empire and report what happened here, your military leaders will have to reconsider their entire approach to dealing with humanity." The captain stood up and walked over to one of the display screens that showed the position of both ships floating peacefully in space. "Your war cruiser carries enough firepower to devastate an entire planet," he observed. "But all that power is useless if you cannot effectively target your enemies. We could have destroyed your vessel before you even knew we were here using weapons and tactics your sensors cannot detect," he continued. "Instead, we chose to capture your boarding party and educate them about human capabilities. This approach provides much better long-term results." Park Ji-hoon explained that this same educational process had been repeated dozens of times throughout the galaxy as human ships encountered various alien military forces. Word was spreading among the interstellar powers that humanity was not the easy target. Many had assumed most species are beginning to understand that warfare against humans would be costly and unpredictable. He said, "Even victory would come at a price that few governments are willing to pay when peaceful alternatives are available." The general realized that everything he had experienced was part of a larger strategy designed to prevent galactic warfare through demonstration, rather than destruction. The humans were systematically educating potential enemies about their capabilities in order to make conflict unnecessary. It was a completely alien approach to military doctrine that seemed to contradict everything he had learned about power and dominance throughout his career. Yet the results spoke for themselves. His boarding party had been completely neutralized without a single fatality on either side. Kim Hye-jin announced that preparations were complete for returning the alien soldiers to their shuttle. All injuries had been treated, and each trooper had received a complete briefing on the various systems that had captured them. The educational process was now complete. Captain Lee Dong-hyun offered General Kickstar assistance in standing up and walking to the airlock where his shuttle waited. The humans had even repaired minor damage to his armor and equipment so that he would return to his ship in better condition than when he had left it, as they walked. Through the corridors that continued to shift and change around them, the general asked one final question. "What happens now? Do you expect my empire to simply surrender based on this demonstration?" The captain considered the question carefully before answering. "We expect your empire to make informed decisions based on accurate information about human capabilities," he said. "That is all we have ever wanted from any of our potential neighbors in the galaxy. When you report back to your superiors, you will be able to provide them with first-hand experience of human military technology," Park Ji-hoon added. "This information should help them avoid making costly mistakes in the future at the airlock." General Kickstar paused and looked back at the three humans who had completely redefined his understanding of warfare. They appeared so ordinary and harmless, yet they possessed capabilities that made his empire's military superiority meaningless. "Thank you," he said. Finally, the words feeling strange. In his mouth, "I came here to kill you, and instead you have taught me something valuable about the nature of strength. I will make sure my superiors understand what I have learned." Captain Lee Dong-hyun smiled and offered a traditional human handshake, which the general accepted carefully with one of his undamaged arms. "Perhaps our species can find common ground based on mutual respect rather than mutual fear," he said as General Kickstar returned to his shuttle and prepared to face the difficult conversation with his crew and superiors. He knew that this encounter had changed everything. The war his empire had been planning against humanity would have to be reconsidered in light of what he had experienced. The humans had proven that they were not the weak prey his commanders had assumed them to be. They were something far more dangerous than any traditional enemy, sophisticated opponents who could turn warfare itself into an educational experience. The general looked at his damaged arms and realized they would serve as permanent reminders of the price of arrogance and the value of understanding one's enemies before committing to conflict. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from defeating one's opponents, but from learning to respect them. The mechanical device that had emerged from Captain Lee Dong-hyun's clothing wrapped around General Kickstar's left arms like living metal. The more the general struggled to break free, the tighter the restraints became until he could hear the disturbing sound of his own bones beginning to crack under the pressure. Kim Hyejin explained calmly that humans had developed personal defense systems based on ancient martial arts combined with modern technology. What appeared to be normal clothing actually contained flexible restraint mechanisms that could redirect an attacker's strength against themselves. The harder someone grabs, the more damage they inflict on their own limbs, she said, as if she were giving a lecture rather than watching their enemy being defeated. The system uses the opponent's force to trigger mechanical responses that are impossible to break through. Brute strength alone. Park Ji-hoon added that this was a non-lethal approach preferred by human military doctrine. Rather than simply killing enemies, humans had learned that defeating them in unexpected ways created much more effective psychological warfare. Word would spread throughout the galaxy about impossible defeats, making future conflicts easier to resolve. The general found himself pinned to what had once been the floor, with his two left arms completely trapped and useless. Intense pain shot through his limbs every time he tried to move, and he could feel his natural armor cracking under the mechanical pressure. The device seemed to anticipate his every attempt to escape. His boarding party was in similar trouble throughout the ship. Those soldiers who had tried to force their way through doors had been caught by hidden restraint systems. Others who had attempted to break equipment had triggered defensive mechanisms that left them trapped or unconscious. One trooper called out over the communication system that he was stuck in what appeared to be a storage compartment that had sealed itself around him. Another reported that the floor in the engine room had become some kind of adhesive surface that prevented movement. The ship itself had become a living trap captain. Lee Dong-hyun knelt down beside the struggling general and spoke in a voice that remained calm and respectful despite everything that had happened. "General, I want you to understand that we mean you no permanent harm. Our goal is not to hurt you, but to help you learn something important about human capabilities. The restraint system can cause serious injury if you continue to fight against it," he explained. The mechanism is designed to respond to violent resistance with increased pressure. If you relax and stop struggling, the device will automatically adjust to prevent permanent damage to your limbs. Kickstar wanted to roar defiance and continue fighting, but the pain in his arms was becoming unbearable. He could feel bones grinding against each other and knew that continued resistance would result in permanent disability. His warrior pride battled against practical survival instincts. Park Ji-hoon moved to a control panel and began adjusting various settings throughout the ship. The engineer explained that they were releasing the other members of the boarding party from similar restraint systems. The aliens would be returned to their shuttle unharmed, but hopefully with a new understanding of human technology. "We could have destroyed your entire war cruiser from a distance using weapons you never detected," Kim Hyejin pointed out as she monitored the communication channels between the alien soldiers. "We could have killed everyone on your ship without you ever knowing we were there. Instead, we chose to demonstrate our capabilities in a way that would minimize casualties and provide educational value." She continued, "Your empire has been making decisions based on incomplete information about human military doctrine. This encounter should help correct those misconceptions." The general slowly stopped struggling, as the pain in his arms reminded him that continued resistance was pointless. The mechanical restraints immediately began to loosen slightly, providing relief from the crushing pressure. His bones were damaged but appeared to still be intact. Captain Lee Dong-hyun helped him sit up in a more comfortable position, while the restraint system continued to hold his arms immobile. The human offered him water and basic medical supplies from a kit that had emerged from another hidden panel in the wall. "Your soldiers are being treated with similar courtesy," he said as medical scanners began analyzing the general's injuries. "We have no desire to create permanent enemies when we could instead create informed allies who understand our true capabilities." Throughout The ship's similar scenes were taking place as the human vessel released its trapped prisoners. Each alien soldier was receiving medical attention for minor injuries while being educated about the various systems that had captured them. The lessons were practical demonstrations of human engineering. Philosophy, Park Ji-hoon explained that the entire encounter had been carefully planned from the moment their ship had appeared to be helpless in space. The humans had deliberately made themselves appear vulnerable in order to draw the Vegan forces into a situation where they could be educated rather than simply defeated. "We have been monitoring your empire's military communications for months," he said as he helped treat wounded soldiers. "Your commanders have been making tactical decisions based on seriously flawed assumptions about human warfare capabilities. This demonstration was designed to provide accurate information that could be transmitted back to your military leadership, Kim." Hyejin added, "The goal is to prevent future conflicts by ensuring that your decision-makers understand what they would actually be facing in a war against humanity." The general was beginning to understand the scope of what had happened to him. This had never been a trap designed to capture or kill his forces. It had been an elaborate educational exercise intended to teach his empire about human capabilities. The humans had been trying to prevent a war rather than win one. Every aspect of the encounter had been carefully planned to demonstrate different elements of human military doctrine. The apparently helpless transport ship had actually been a mobile classroom designed to provide practical lessons in human tactical thinking. As medical systems continued treating his injuries, Kickstar realized that his entire understanding of warfare had been challenged by this encounter. These humans had defeated his forces without killing anyone, had captured trained soldiers without using lethal weapons, and had turned a military assault into a learning experience. The implications were staggering. If humans could do this to a full boarding party led by an experienced general, what could they do to an entire invasion fleet? The Vegan Empire's military superiority was based on physical strength and direct confrontation, but these creatures had made both advantages completely irrelevant. Captain Lee Dong-yun sat down beside him as the medical scanners finished their work. "Your arms will require surgery to repair the bone damage, but there should be no permanent loss of function," he said. The restraint system was programmed to stop just short of causing irreversible injury. "I hope this experience has been educational for you and your crew," the human continued. "We would much rather have the Vegan Empire as allies than enemies. There is room in the galaxy for both our species to prosper without conflict." The general looked around at his soldiers who were being helped by Park Ji-hoon and Kim Hyejin. All of the aliens appeared confused, but unharmed. The humans had kept their promise about minimizing casualties while delivering an unforgettable lesson about their capabilities. For the first time in his military career, General Kickstar found himself seriously considering the possibility that his empire had been making a terrible mistake in underestimating these remarkable creatures. General Kickstar launched himself across the bridge like a living missile, all four of his powerful arms extended toward Captain Lee Dong-yun. His species was capable of incredible bursts of speed, and he moved faster than most creatures could even see. The attack should have been over in seconds with the human captain crushed under his superior strength. But as he moved through the air, something unexpected happened. Kim Hyejin calmly pressed a button on her console, and suddenly the ship's artificial gravity shifted 90 degrees. What had been the floor became a wall, and what had been a wall became the floor. Kickstar found himself slammed against what had been the ceiling, his attack completely disrupted. The impact knocked the wind out of his lungs and left him gasping for breath. His boarding party was also caught completely off guard, struggling to maintain their footing as the ship's orientation seemed to change randomly around them before the general could recover and reorient himself. The gravity shifted again, sending him tumbling across what was now the floor. Several of his soldiers crashed into control panels and equipment as they tried to adapt to the constantly changing environment. Captain Lee Dong-yun remained perfectly stable throughout the entire process, walking calmly across what appeared to be a vertical wall. His boots somehow found purchase on the smooth surface, as if gravity had no effect on him at all. Human ships are designed with variable gravity systems. For exactly this purpose, he explained, as he helped one of the confused alien soldiers to his feet. While other species build their vessels with fixed orientation, humans learn to use three-dimensional thinking in combat. The captain demonstrated, by stepping onto what clearly should have been a ceiling panel and walking across it as easily as if it were a normal floor. His crew moved with the same impossible grace, adapting instantly to each change in the ships. Gravity Field Park, Jihoon, activated another set of controls, and suddenly the bridge began to reconfigure itself around them. Walls slid aside to reveal new passages, while floors opened up to show additional levels. The entire internal structure of the ship seemed to be rearranging itself into completely new patterns. Our entire vessel is filled with hidden mechanisms and systems, he said as panels continued to move and shift throughout the room. What looks like a simple transport ship is actually a sophisticated, tactical platform designed to use an opponent's expectations against them. The young engineer touched a series of controls in sequence, and the bridge transformed once again. New corridors appeared where solid walls had been moments before, while equipment, bays opened in the floor and ceiling. The space seemed to expand and contract like a living thing. Kim Hyejin pointed out that this was standard human military design philosophy, rather than relying on heavy armor or powerful weapons humans preferred. To make their enemies defeat themselves through confusion and disorientation, most species were so focused on direct confrontation that they never learned to think creatively about combat. One of Kickstar's soldiers tried to move toward what he thought was an exit, only to find that the doorway had sealed itself behind a new wall panel. Another trooper discovered that the floor beneath his feet had become transparent, revealing empty space below. The aliens were becoming increasingly panicked, as their environment refused to follow normal physical rules. The general himself was struggling to understand what was happening around him. Every time he thought he had figured out the ship's layout, something else would change, leaving him confused and disoriented. His thermal vision was useless because the walls kept moving, and his sense of direction had been completely compromised. Kickstar realized that his boarding party was now scattered throughout a vessel that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Some of his soldiers were calling for help over their communication devices, but their voices seemed to be coming from impossible directions. The ship had somehow separated his forces without him even noticing. Park Ji-hoon explained that human engineering was based on adaptability rather than strength. While other species built things to resist force, humans built things to redirect force back at their attackers. The ship itself had become a weapon that used the enemy's own actions against them. The young engineer demonstrated by showing how the wall panels could be programmed to respond to different types of pressure. A gentle human touch would open passages and reveal hidden systems, but violent impacts would trigger defensive mechanisms that trapped or redirected attackers. Kim Hyejin added that the psychological effect was just as important as the physical advantages. Most species expected ships to behave in predictable ways and became confused when their assumptions were proven wrong. This confusion made them easier to defeat without requiring any actual violence. Captain Lee. Dong-hyun walked over to where General Kickstar was struggling to maintain his balance on the shifting floor. The human offered a steady hand to help the general stand upright, but Kickstar angrily knocked the assistance away with one of his arms. The general was furious at being made to look foolish in front of his own troops, but he was also beginning to understand that he had seriously underestimated his opponents. These humans had turned warfare into something completely different from what he had experienced in decades of military service. Instead of trying to match their enemy's strength, they had found ways to make strength irrelevant. They used physics and engineering and psychology as weapons in ways that pure physical power could never counter. It was a completely alien approach to conflict that left traditional warriors helpless. Kickstar decided to make one final desperate attack. He might not understand how their technology worked, but he was still a vegan warrior with 4 powerful arms and natural armor that could stop most weapons. If he could just get his hands on one of these humans, he could end this humiliation. He spotted Captain Lee Dong-hyun standing near what appeared to be a stable section of wall and launched himself forward with all his remaining strength. This time, he would not be distracted by gravity shifts or moving panels. He would grab the human and crush him before any more tricks could be employed. The general managed to close the distance and wrapped 2 of his powerful arms around the human captain's torso. He squeezed with enough force to crush steel, expecting to hear bones breaking and to feel the satisfaction of finally defeating his tormentor. But instead of being crushed, Captain Lee Dong-hyun seemed to flow around his grip like liquid. The human's body gave way under pressure, but instead of being damaged, he somehow redirected the force in a way that left Kickstar grasping at empty air. Before the general could understand what had happened, he felt intense pain shooting through both of his left arms. He looked down in shock to see that his limbs had become entangled in some kind of mechanical device that had emerged from the human's clothing. The airlock door slid open with a soft whoosh, and General Kickstar stepped into the human ship for the first time. The corridor was dimly lit with a strange blue glow that hurt his eyes slightly. The air smelled different from what he was used to on his own vessel. It had a clean metallic scent mixed with something organic that he could not identify. His thermal vision immediately picked up 3 heat signatures ahead in what his scanners had identified as the ship's bridge area. Perfect, he thought to himself. This would be even easier than he had expected. The humans were all gathered in one place waiting for him, like sheep in a pen ready for slaughter. Kickstar gestured with 2 of his arms for his boarding party to spread out and secure the exits while he moved forward to confront the humans directly. He wanted to savor this moment and make sure none of them could escape when they realized what was about to happen to them. His soldiers moved quickly and silently, taking positions throughout the ship. The general walked slowly down the corridor, his heavy boots making loud clanking sounds on the metal floor. He wanted the humans to hear him coming and to feel the fear building as death approached them step by step. His species had always believed that terror was just as important as physical strength in defeating enemies. As he reached the entrance to the bridge, he paused for a moment to activate his personal recording device. This historic moment needed to be captured so that it could be broadcast throughout the galaxy. Everyone would see how the mighty General Kickstar had finally ended the human threat once and for all. The bridge doors opened automatically as he approached, and Kickstar stepped into a room that was smaller than he had expected. The ceiling was low by his standards, and the walls were lined with simple control panels and display screens. Nothing looked particularly advanced or threatening. 3 humans stood calmly in the center of the room, as if they were waiting for invited guests rather than facing their own destruction. Captain Lee Dong-hyun was a man of average height with black hair and dark eyes who wore a simple blue uniform. His engineer Park Ji-hoon was younger and thinner, with a friendly face that showed no signs of fear or worry. The 3rd human was Kim Hye-jin, the communications officer. She was a woman with long, dark hair pulled back in a practical style. Her uniform was neat and clean, and she stood with perfect posture, as if she were on parade rather than about to die. All 3 humans appeared completely relaxed and unworried by his presence. This strange, calm behavior only made Kickstar more confident in his victory. Clearly, these humans had accepted their fate and would not even try to resist. Perhaps they had finally realized that their reputation was built on luck rather than skill, and that luck had now run out. Captain Lee Dong-hyun stepped forward slightly and performed what Kickstar recognized as a human greeting gesture. He bowed his head respectfully and smiled in a way that seemed genuinely welcoming rather than fearful or hostile. The polite behavior was completely unexpected and somehow made the general even more angry. "Welcome aboard." Our vessel general, the human, said in perfect galactic common language, his voice calm and steady. "Is there anything we can do to make your visit more comfortable? Perhaps some refreshments or information about our ship systems." The casual politeness infuriated Kickstar more than any insult could have. These humans were treating this like a social visit rather than a military conquest. Did they really think they could talk their way out of certain death through good manners and friendly conversation? General raised all four of his powerful arms in a threatening display that had terrified countless enemies on dozens of worlds. "Your reign of terror ends today, human," he roared in a voice that echoed off the bridge walls. "I have been hunting you across the galaxy, and now you have nowhere left to run." He began to describe in vivid detail exactly how he planned to kill each of them slowly and painfully, making sure they understood that this was the price for defying the Vegan Empire. His boarding party watched from their positions around the room, anticipating the violence that was sure to follow. But the three humans just stood there listening politely, as if he were giving them a weather report rather than promising their deaths. Park Ji-hoon even nodded occasionally, as if he found the general's threats interesting from a technical standpoint. Kim Hyejin maintained her perfect posture and professional smile throughout the entire speech. When Kickstar finished his dramatic declaration, he expected to see fear-terror, or at least some sign that the humans understood the gravity of their situation. Instead, Captain Lee Dong-hyun thanked him for explaining the situation so clearly and asked if he had any other concerns they could address. This bizarre reaction left the general momentarily speechless. He had delivered similar threats to hundreds of enemies over his long military career and had never encountered such a calm response. Usually, his victims were begging for mercy or trying to negotiate. By this point in the conversation, Park Ji-hoon spoke up from his position near what appeared to be the engineering controls. "General, you seem quite upset about something. Perhaps we have misunderstood the nature of your visit. Were you hoping for a more traditional military engagement with weapons and battle tactics?" Kim Hyejin added helpfully that if the general preferred a more formal approach to conflict resolution, they would be happy to accommodate his preferences. Human diplomatic protocols were quite flexible and could be adapted to suit different cultural expectations. Kickstar realized that the humans were somehow mocking him, though he could not understand how they remained so confident in the face of certain defeat. Perhaps they were simply too stupid to understand the danger they were in, or maybe they had some kind of mental disorder that prevented them from feeling fear. He decided to demonstrate his superior strength and make them take the situation seriously. With a mighty roar that shook the entire bridge, he swung one massive fist at the metal bulkhead beside him. The reinforced steel crumpled under the impact, leaving a deep crater in the wall that went nearly halfway through the thick plating. The sound of the impact echoed through the ship like thunder, and several pieces of equipment sparked from the vibration. His boarding party cheered appreciatively at this display of raw power, knowing that no human could possibly match such incredible physical strength. The three humans examined the damaged wall with what appeared to be genuine interest and admiration. Captain Lee Dong-hyun walked over to inspect the crater more closely, running his fingers along the twisted metal edges. "That is quite impressive." "General," he said with obvious respect, "your species certainly possesses remarkable physical capabilities." Then the human captain turned back to face him with that same calm smile and made an offer that seemed impossible under the circumstances. "General, would you be interested in a small, friendly wager? If I can match your demonstration of strength, would you consider allowing us to continue on our journey?" The suggestion was so absurd that Kickstar began laughing uncontrollably. His deep grinding chuckles filled the bridge, and his boarding party joined in until the room echoed with alien amusement. A weak human thought he could match the strength of a Vegan warrior. It was the funniest thing the general had heard in years. This was going to be even more entertaining than he had hoped. The human would probably break every bone in his hand trying to punch reinforced steel, and then Kickstar could begin the real violence with his enemies already weakened and demoralized by their leaders. Obvious failure. Perfect, he said, still chuckling. I accept your pathetic wager, human. When you fail, I will make sure your death is especially slow and painful for wasting my time with such foolishness. Now show me this matching strength you claim to possess. Captain Lee Dongyun walked calmly over to the damaged section of the bulkhead where General Kickstar had left his impressive crater in the reinforced steel. The human moved with an easy confidence that seemed completely out of place given the deadly situation he and his crew were facing. Kickstar watched with amusement as the small human placed his bare hand against the twisted metal surface. The general's 4 arms were crossed over his chest, and his sharp teeth showed in a predatory grin. Was looking forward to watching this weak creature hurt himself trying to match Vagan's strength. The human captain pressed gently against the wall with just his palm, and suddenly the entire section collapsed inward with a tremendous crash. The metal didn't just bend or dent like it had when Kickstar hit it. Instead, the whole panel crumpled like thin paper, creating a gaping hole that revealed the ship's internal systems and wiring. The sound was deafening, and pieces of debris scattered across the bridge floor. Several of the alien soldiers jumped back in shock, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The laughter died immediately as every member of the boarding party stared at the destruction in stunned silence. Kickstar felt a cold sensation run through his body as he looked at the massive hole in the wall. No being in the known galaxy possessed that kind of raw physical power. Not even the legendary crystal warriors of the Outer Rim or the stone giants of the heavy gravity. Worlds could destroy reinforced ship hulls with a gentle touch. The human captain stepped back from the ruined wall and brushed some metal dust off his hands as if he had just completed a simple household chore. He turned to face the general with the same calm smile he had worn throughout their entire encounter. That was quite impressive, General, he said politely. Your species' strength is truly remarkable. I hope my small demonstration was adequate to match your own display park Jihoon. The engineer spoke up helpfully from his position near the control panels. He gestured toward the destroyed wall section as he explained what had just happened in terms that everyone could understand. Human ships use special construction techniques, he said in a conversational tone. Strategic weak points are built into the hull structure during manufacturing. These points are invisible to most scanning equipment, but they are marked with nearly undetectable pressure sensors. The young engineer walked over to another wall panel and touched it lightly with one finger. The entire section immediately folded away like origami, revealing another compartment filled with complex machinery. A human who knows where to press can cause controlled structural failures that look like superhuman strength. Kim Hye-jin added her own explanation from the communications station. This is just one of many human innovations that other species have not discovered yet. Humans learned long ago to use physics, psychology, and engineering as weapons in ways that pure physical strength could never match. She gestured to her control console where complex programs were running calculations based on the positions and movements of every member of the boarding party. The display showed tactical information that updated in real time as the aliens shifted their positions. Kickstar began to understand that he had walked directly into a carefully prepared trap, but his warrior pride would not let him retreat or admit defeat. He had spent too many years building his reputation as an unstoppable force to back down from a challenge by mere humans. He barked orders to his boarding party, telling them to spread out and search every compartment of the ship for hidden weapons or concealed troops. There had to be some conventional explanation for what he had just witnessed. Humans could not possibly possess technology this advanced. His soldiers moved more cautiously now, no longer certain that this would be the easy victory they had expected. The general himself felt confused and off balance for the first time in many years of military service. Everything he thought he knew about human capabilities was being proven wrong. The three humans watched patiently as the alien soldiers searched their ship, making no attempt to stop them or hide anything. Captain Lee Dong-hyun even offered helpful suggestions about where they might want to look and what they might find interesting. One of Kickstar's troops called out from a storage compartment that he had found what appeared to be personal belongings and spare equipment, but no weapons or additional crew members. Another soldier reported that the engine room contained standard propulsion systems. With no obvious modifications or hidden features, the general was becoming more frustrated by the minute. Every scan and search confirmed what his instruments had already told him. This really was just a small civilian transport vessel with 3 crew members and no military equipment. Yet somehow these humans had just demonstrated capabilities that defied everything he understood about physics and engineering. Park Ji-hoon noticed the general's growing confusion and decided to offer another demonstration. He walked over to a section of the bridge floor and pressed his foot down in a specific pattern. Suddenly, a new passage opened up, revealing stairs that led to a lower deck that had not shown up on any of their scans. Our ships have modular internal structures. He explained cheerfully, the configuration can be changed as needed for different missions. What looks like a simple transport vessel is actually a sophisticated platform designed to adapt to various situations. Kim Hyejin activated another control, and the bridge's ceiling panel slid aside, revealing additional space above their heads. The room suddenly seemed twice as large as it had appeared before hidden storage compartments opened throughout the area, displaying equipment and systems that had been completely invisible moments earlier. Kickstar realized that every assumption he had made about this encounter had been completely wrong. The humans had not been trapped at all. They had been hunting him just as surely as he had been hunting them. His boarding party was now scattered throughout a ship that kept revealing new surprises with every passing minute. The general found himself alone on what had been a simple bridge, facing 3 humans who seemed perfectly at home in this impossible environment that changed its configuration at will. Everything he had thought he knew about warfare and tactics was being challenged by these remarkable creatures. He decided that talk was useless, and that only direct action would resolve this situation. His species had always solved problems through violence and superior strength. These humans might have clever tricks and advanced technology, but they still had soft flesh and breakable bones. With a roar of rage that echoed through the transformed bridge, General Kickstar launched himself forward, intending to grab Captain Lee Dong-hyun with all 4 of his powerful arms and end this humiliation once and for all. General Kickstar stood tall on the command deck of his massive warship, watching the small human transport vessel floating helplessly in the dark space ahead. His 4 powerful arms were crossed over his chest, and his sharp teeth showed in what passed for a smile among his kind. The vegan empire had been hunting these particular humans for many weeks now, and finally they had caught them. The human ship looked pathetic compared to his mighty cruiser, which was over 10 times larger and carried enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. His sensors showed that the human vessel had no weapons at all, no energy shields, and only 3 life forms aboard. It was exactly what his intelligence reports had promised him, an easy target with nowhere to run. His tactical officer approached with quick, nervous steps. The alien creature had 6 legs and moved like a giant insect across the metal floor of the bridge. "Sir, the human ship is sending us a message. They are requesting safe passage to the trading station in this system." The officer held out a small device that showed the transmission data. Kickstar let out a sound that was like rocks grinding together, which was how his species laughed. The sound made several crew members step back because they knew it meant their commander was about to do something violent. "These humans think they can just ask nicely, and we will let them go," he said, his voice deep and threatening. "They have no idea what kind of trouble they are in." The general had been personally hunting Captain Lee Dong-hyun and his crew for over 2 months now. These three humans had somehow managed to defeat much larger alien forces on multiple planets using tactics that made no sense to anyone. The reports from his field commanders were embarrassing and hard to believe. A small group of humans had outfought trained soldiers who were bigger, stronger, and better armed on the planet Nexus 7. A full battalion of vegan soldiers had been defeated by just these three humans. The official report claimed that the humans had used some kind of advanced technology, but Kickstar suspected his troops had simply been cowards. The same thing had happened on Titan Base, and again on the mining colony of Kepler 9. Each time his forces had outnumbered the humans by at least 50-1, and each time they had lost. Now finally he had them trapped in open space with no help coming and no place to hide. His war cruiser carried over 5,000 soldiers and had enough weapons to fight an entire fleet. The human ship was so small it could probably fit inside his cargo bay. This time, there would be no escape and no excuses. The general walked over to the main viewing screen, which showed a close-up image of the human vessel. It looked like a standard civilian transport ship, the kind used by merchants and travelers throughout the galaxy. There were no gun ports, no missile tubes, and no armor plating. The hull appeared to be made of basic metal alloys that his weapons could cut through like paper your orders. Sir asked his second-in-command, a tall, thin alien with purple skin and 4 eyes. The creature had served under Kickstar for many years and knew better than to question his decisions. But there was something in his voice that suggested concern. Kickstar thought for a moment, enjoying the feeling of having his enemies trapped and helpless. He could simply order his gunners to destroy the human ship from a distance. It would be quick and clean, and would finally end the embarrassing reports about human victories. But that seemed too easy and would not send the right message to the rest of the galaxy. No, he decided he wanted to make this personal. The humans had made him look foolish in front of his superiors and had cost him several promotions. He wanted them to see his face before they died, and he wanted the rest of the galaxy to know exactly who had ended their impossible winning streak. Prepare a boarding party, he commanded. His voice echoing across the bridge, I will lead the assault myself. We will take their ship and capture the humans alive. I want to see the fear in their eyes when they realize their luck has finally run out. His crew looked surprised by this decision. Most generals preferred to command from a safe distance rather than risk themselves in direct combat. But Kickstar was not like other commanders. He had risen through the ranks by being the strongest and most violent warrior in his unit. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their incredible physical power and natural fighting abilities. Each of his 4 arms was strong enough to bend steel bars, and his natural armor could stop most energy weapons. His reflexes were 10 times faster than a human, and his senses could detect movement in complete darkness. He had personally killed hundreds of enemies in hand-to-hand combat and had never been defeated in single battle. What could 3 unarmed humans possibly do against someone like him? The very idea was almost insulting. His species had conquered dozens of worlds and had never met an enemy they could not crush through pure physical force. These humans might have gotten lucky against some weak-minded troops, but they had never faced a real warrior. His tactical officer pulled up the scanning data on the main screen. Sir, the human ship appears to have minimal life support and no defensive systems. We are detecting standard atmospheric composition and normal gravity. The hull temperature suggests their engines are operating at minimal power. Perfect, said Kickstar, studying the information. They are probably trying to conserve power while they think of a way to escape, but there is nowhere for them to go and nothing they can do. We have them completely surrounded. He selected his 20 best soldiers for the boarding party. Each one was a veteran warrior who had served in dozens of battles. They carried the finest weapons and wore the strongest armor available. To the vegan military. If the humans had any hidden surprises waiting, his troops would be ready for anything. The general made one final check of his personal equipment. His armor was polished to a mirror finish, and his weapons were charged to full power. He wanted to look impressive when he stepped aboard the human ship. The image of him defeating the famous human warriors would be broadcast across the Empire and would restore his reputation. Sir warned his second-in-command one more time. "Are you certain this is not some kind of trap? The humans have surprised our forces before, and their tactics are often unpredictable. Perhaps we should scan their ship more carefully before boarding." Kickstar waved away the concern with one massive hand. The scans clearly show no weapons, no hidden troops, and no defensive systems. It will be like stepping on insects under our feet. These humans may have fooled some weak commanders, but they will not fool me. He strode toward the docking bay where his boarding party was waiting. The massive doors slid open with a hiss of hydraulics, revealing the sleek shuttlecraft that would carry them to the human vessel. His soldiers stood at attention as he approached, their weapons ready and their armor. Gleaming under the bright lights, today would be the day that showed the galaxy the truth about humans. They were not the unstoppable warriors that propaganda claimed they were. They were just another weak species that had gotten lucky a few times. When word spread about how easily General Kickstar had defeated them, other worlds would think twice before resisting the Vegan Empire. The shuttle launched from the war cruiser and crossed the short distance to the human transport ship. The docking tube extended and locked into place with a solid metallic clang. Kickstar could feel his heart beating faster with excitement as he prepared to board the enemy vessel. In just a few minutes, this whole embarrassing chapter of his military career would be over. The humans would be dead or captured, and he would return to his ship as a hero. The story of this victory would be told throughout the Empire for generations to come. He activated the airlock controls and stepped forward into the human ship, ready to claim his prize.